Rebellion politics, the opposite of what you know is politics. Where corporate capital makes the government break their promise. It's a new day where people create the policy. The economy trickles up to eradicate the poverty. So get up, stand up, these are our demands. What we want our money back, so politicians get your hands up. Equal distribution of the land and the profits, an end to all war and a socialized democracy.
Welcome to the Popular Resistance Report. Today we are joined by Bruce Gagnon. He's the coordinator of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. Thank you for joining us, Bruce.
Thank you for having me.
So you're on your 33rd day?
That's right.
Of a hunger strike. Tell us why you're on a hunger strike.
Well, General Dynamics, which owns Bath Iron Works here where I live in Bath, Maine, has come to our state and demanded $60 million in corporate welfare. Now, this is on top of over $200 million that they've received from Maine and the city of Bath since 1997. And so myself and other people from around the state, mostly peace activists, have been organizing this campaign now for 2 months in the state legislature to oppose this. And we've already, the taxation committee, under pressure from people that we've organized around the state, have cut it to 45 million over 15 years rather than 20 years. And we're now working to cut it even further, if not eliminate the whole thing.
Now tell us what General Dynamics does at Bath Iron Works. What are they building there?
They build destroyers, Aegis destroyers that are outfitted with so-called missile defense systems that are key elements in U.S. first strike attack planning. And these are being used to surround Russia and China today as part of U.S. preparation for first strike attack planning. They also fire cruise missiles. And then they also, at Bath Iron Works, are building the new Zumwalt stealth destroyer that has been breaking down after it leaves port repeatedly. And the shells on it are so expensive that the Navy can't even afford to provide them.
Virginia Corporation, and it's in Maine. And why are they having trouble financially? Why do they need the money for?
No, they're not. They made $3 billion in profits last year. And a really great reporter out of Rhode Island by the name of Alex Nunes broke a story a couple months ago saying that they've spent $14.4 billion at General Dynamics since 2009 buying back their own stocks, driving up the market value of their stocks. So they had all that cash on hand. And just very recently, like a few weeks ago, they spent about $8 billion buying some IT company. So they're rich, they're loaded, and they have operations all over the world.
And in fact, they're not just trying to get money from Maine, but they're also trying to get it from other states, Kentucky, Connecticut. Is that correct?
That's right. They're hitting Connecticut up for 150 million right now. They just recently got 20 million from Rhode Island, and also they're going after Kentucky.
Wow.
And these stock buybacks, that means that investors get wealthier and that the CEO's salary is tied to those and executive salaries. So every time they buy back stock, the executives are essentially deciding to give themselves a raise.
That's right. And the executive CEO in 2016 made 21 million. So former CIA agent by the name of Phebe Novakovic.
Now, my sense is that many states around the country are struggling with their budgets to meet their basic needs for education, infrastructure. What impact are you concerned that this, beyond the fact that it's just egregious to give so much money to a corporation and one that destroys, around the world, but what impact does that have locally?
Yeah, huge, because Maine currently has 43,000 children living in poverty. This is we have a small population in the state, about 1.3 million people. So 43,000 children living in poverty, tens of thousands of people with no health care. And massive problems, infrastructure, as you can imagine, roads, bridges, sewer, water systems, the whole works, falling apart all over the state. There's no money. And now they've come forward with this. And it's been introduced by two Democrats from this area of Bath. And so the Democrat leadership in the state government is supporting this. At the same time, they've been critical of Trump's recent federal tax cut bill. And
Which
so,
is the same thing on a national level.
exactly, just, you know, here on an admittedly smaller scale. So the hypocrisy within the Democrats is unbelievable. And so the fact is that the various lobby groups in the state, organizations like the Maine People's Alliance, which is really a Democratic Party front group funded by Democratic Party and their donors, they're staying out of this fight. So we've really been left by the liberal Democrats to fight this on our own. So primarily it's been the peace community that's had to take this up.
And it's been an ongoing campaign, though. I mean, it's not just this corporate welfare tax break that's been protested. You've been involved in protesting the ironworks for quite a while.
That's right, for many years. And we've been doing civil disobedience at the christenings, particularly the last two times. And just in February, the local Superior Court justice here in Bath threw out the case that the state brought against 9 of us for the last christening civil disobedience, saying that the Bath police had been outsourced to Bath Ironworks, General Dynamics.
I remember that decision. That was an amazing decision for the court to say that the police had been outsourced to the corporation.
And since that time, this guy, Alex Nunes, this reporter out of Rhode Island, has done a story talking about how not only the police department has been outsourced, but our local paper here in this Bath Brunswick area has also been outsourced to Bath Ironworks. We've had a 3-year op-ed twice a month. Our local peace group called Peaceworks has had that, and we take turns writing it. It was my turn. I wrote a piece about this situation. The editor refused to print it. And then when we complained, he canceled our op-ed.
Wow.
So Nunes wrote about how this paper has been outsourced, and then he wrote a story about the state representative from the Bath area. He got her emails under the Freedom of Information Act with the vice president of Bath Ironworks and showed how she was a total collaborator with them. They wrote the bill, they created the strategy, and it was all disclosed in these emails. So he's really done a hell of a story about how this entire state has been outsourced to General Dynamics.
He's from Rhode Island.
How are you being received with your message? And particularly, how are the workers at Bath Ironworks feeling about this?
Well, it's been really amazing. When I started the hunger strike, the first week I went every day at noon and 3:30 during shift change down to Bath Ironworks and got to talk, especially at noontime, to a lot of workers. And I discovered that there were quite a few that were opposed to the bill. They're very angry at General Dynamics because in the last contract, a 4-year contract, they got no pay increases for 4 years. They got squeezed on health care and pension benefits. And so there's no love for General Dynamics. And then this great story came out in a monthly publication out of Portland called The Bollard, the front page story in February. It was entitled Ship of Fools, Tax Breaks for Bath Ironworks, World War III for the Rest of Us. And it was a hugely comprehensive story about all the years of these corporate welfare giveaways to Bath Ironworks and General Dynamics. And so this had a huge effect across the state. It really broke a lot of doors open for us. And on my first day of my hunger strike, I went to the union just to let them know what I was planning to do, that this was not aimed at the workers. And one of the guys reached over on his desk and held up the copy of the Bollard, and he didn't even have to say anything, but it was like he was saying, "We get it, we understand." Mm-hmm. And so we were told that as a result of that story, one of the workers at the shipyard began educating other workers about General Dynamics and the buybacks and the stock and all that stuff. And so they had a membership meeting where 100 workers came. They took a vote, And it was a 50-50 vote, and they decided not to endorse the bill, which is huge in this state, because all the Democrats, they're hanging on, oh, we've got to support the workers. The workers want this. This is why we have to vote for it. But now the union, the biggest of the 4 unions at Bath Iron Works, it's about 3,500 members.
Wow.
Out of about 5,500 workers altogether. So it's the biggest union. For them to say we're staying out of this is really huge, but none of the media will cover it.
It's interesting that this big union comes out refusing to endorse it. The workers are stiffed on pay increases, on health care, and yet the executives are buying back stock to increase their salaries as they're already multi-million-dollar salaries and give investors money. And yet they have the shame, they're not ashamed to say they're doing this tax giveaway for the workers. I mean, is there anything in this giveaway that requires them to give increases to the workers, to actually pay the workers a fair wage? Is that even focused on, or is that just ignored?
No, the only thing they've included is that they have to spend $200 million over the life of this thing, which is now 15 years, on shipyard improvements. But the definitions in the bill are so broad that anything they spend money on, whether it's workers' salaries or materials or whatever, is covered as part of that shipyard improvements. So it's, it's BS.
Wow.
Now I know you're pro-worker. Is there something else that could be done at that shipyard, or do they rely on these military contracts?
That's all they do there. And one of our big messages during all of our protests is conversion of the shipyard. We keep saying that our big problem here today is climate change. Mm-hmm. And that if we don't deal with that soon, the future generations are screwed, literally. And so we call for the conversion of the shipyard to build commuter rail systems, offshore wind turbines. The Gulf of Maine has the largest amount of wind in the entire United States, on the entire continent. And then we call for tidal power systems to be built. And so this has been our mantra now for years.
So a conversion from military spending to domestic spending, transitioning to a clean energy economy, an efficient transportation system. And transit systems are all over the country. No one produces trains in the United States and subways in the United States.
That's right.
So that's all imported. Maine could become the source for the whole country.
That's right. And, but it takes new consciousness from the public first, because the politicians aren't going to step out on this one at all. And so we've got to create that consciousness with the public.
Right. Now, there are some other fasters that are fasting in solidarity with you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, one guy was there with us yesterday. 17 of us were in the hallway for a couple hours of the third floor of the Capitol building, in between the House and Senate chambers while they were in session. One of the guys there is a Veterans for Peace member who's now fasting for, today would be his 12th day along with me, and he says he's going to go as long as I go. And there are about 30 others across the state that have been fasting for a day or several days at a time.
I see you've gotten a lot of letters of support from people in Maine, people in the United States, and from outside the United States.
Yeah, our strategy to get around this media blockage has been to have people write letters to the editor across the state. And so far, we've had about 117 letters, op-eds, and a couple radio interviews on some alternative things, some alternative public access TV across the state, but in 25 different main media outlets. So our letters to the editor have got around this media blockage that we've seen, but we're beginning to see that slowing down now that especially the bigger papers are not printing so many.
Great.
Now you're hearing from around the world. How about, I saw Wales, I saw North Korea. What are you hearing from around the world?
We've been supporting the work of others for a long time, particularly in places like Jeju Island. So they're now reciprocating and supporting them. We've sent a lot of Mainers to Jeju over the years because the ships that leave here, they go to places like Jeju Island, and they've already been there. Ships that were built in Bath now have already gone to Jeju. So people are showing solidarity.
And I just wanted to show our viewers the Space Alert, the newspaper that you put out regularly. This is the winter spring edition and has a beautiful article about connecting the struggle to the people of Jeju, where the U.S. built a military base against the wishes of the community there, strong resistance. I know you and others from Veterans for Peace were part of that resistance as well.
You've traveled a number of critical places. You mentioned North Korea, Japan, Ukraine. What is it? I mean, you grew up in a military family, I understand. So what drives you to be so strongly opposed to U.S. militarism?
Well, I joined the Air Force. I wanted to be like my dad. I joined the Air Force in 1971 during the Vietnam War. And I was sent to a base in California, Travis Air Force Base, that was an airlift base for the war. And GIs would come to our base to fly to Vietnam. And when the planes returned, they would bring the body bags of the dead soldiers. And I would see them stacked up on the runway virtually every day.
Mm-hmm.
There was a strong GI resistance movement in the barracks. And as it turned out, one of the lead organizers was my first roommate. And so they would hold meetings in my room. And I was sitting in the corner. I was a young Republican for Nixon in 1968, vice chair of the Okaloosa County, Florida Young Republican Club. So I really got a real education sitting in that room at night. One night, white guys would bring chairs in and sit in a circle. They were anti-war. Another night, there were Black Panthers from the cities talking about racism in America, racism in the military. And it changed my life. And then when I got out of the Air Force, I was going to college. I never graduated because I got recruited by the United Farm Workers Union in Florida. I was going to the University of Florida. And I quit college to become an organizer in the United Farm Workers Union. And it was there that I learned about solidarity. So my whole time as an organizer in the peace movement, I've always tried to remember the social justice issues, the poor people's issues that I worked on in my earlier years, and try to integrate them into my existing work in the peace movement. So this particular campaign right now, where we're fighting for poor people in Maine, we're fighting for the infrastructure in Maine so that people can have a good life. To me, this is consistent with solidarity that I learned from my time as a union organizer.
What's the best way people support your efforts and show solidarity?
Well, if they live in Maine, contact your state legislators. If you live outside of Maine and you know anybody in Maine, contact them and tell them to get on the case.
We really appreciate your work and keep it up. I hope that this resolves in the way you've been working for. You're doing incredible work.
Thank you both very much.